In the year 872, in the city of Farab, which today lies within modern Kazakhstan, a child was born who would later become one of the greatest philosophers of the Islamic Golden Age. His name was Abu Nasir Muhammad ibn Muhammad al-Farabi. He came from a Persian-speaking family, though some scholars argue about his exact ethnic background. His father was believed to be an army officer, and this provided young Al-Farabi with some access to education and travel. From the very beginning, he showed an extraordinary love for knowledge, for books, and for understanding the world beyond ordinary imagination. By the year 892, when Al-Farabi was just around 20 years old, he left his birthplace and traveled towards the great city of Baghdad, which was at that time the beating heart of the Islamic world's knowledge and culture. Baghdad was filled with libraries, scholars, translators, mathematicians, doctors, and philosophers. This was the city where Greek knowledge had been translated into Arabic under the famous House of Wisdom. When Al-Farabi entered Baghdad, he was entering into the world's most advanced intellectual center. In Baghdad, he studied under the great Christian philosopher and logician, Yuhanna ibn Haylan. It was from him that Al-Farabi learned the foundations of Greek logic, especially the works of Aristotle. By 900, Al-Farabi had already begun distinguishing himself among students as someone with an unusual ability to deeply analyze and interpret Aristotle's works. While many read Aristotle, very few could truly understand the depth of his ideas. Al-Farabi not only understood them, but he explained them in ways that others could also comprehend. By the year 910, Al-Farabi's reputation had grown. People began calling him the second teacher because the first teacher was Aristotle himself. This title reflects the magnitude of Al-Farabi's contribution. He became the bridge between Aristotle and the Islamic world. Without him, Aristotle's philosophy might have remained locked away in difficult texts. With him, it became alive, understandable, and integrated into Islamic thought. Around 920, Al-Farabi wrote one of his most famous works, Al-Madina al-Fadila, or the Virtuous City. In this book, he imagined what a perfect society should look like. He explained that just as the human body has different organs working under the guidance of the heart, a city must have different classes working under the guidance of a wise ruler. He compared this ruler to a philosopher king, someone who is both wise in knowledge and just in action. This idea would later inspire both Muslim and European thinkers, including Thomas Aquinas and even some modern political philosophers. There is an interesting story from this time. It is said that Al-Farabi lived a very simple and ascetic life. While he had access to the courts of rulers, he never showed interest in wealth or luxury. Instead, he lived in humility, spending most of his time in study, teaching, and writing. One story tells that he would sometimes spend entire nights reading and writing under the dim light of a lantern, forgetting food and rest, so absorbed was he in his quest for knowledge. By the year 930, Al-Farabi had become a master not only in philosophy, but also in music, mathematics, and the natural sciences. In fact, he wrote an important book on music called Kitab al-Musiqa al-Kabir, or the Great Book of Music. In this work, he analyzed the science of sound, the mathematical ratios of tones, and the psychological effects of music on the soul. He explained how music could heal emotions, inspire courage, or bring peace to the mind. This showed his holistic vision for him. Philosophy was not only abstract thinking, but also about improving the quality of human life. In 940, Al-Farabi traveled to Aleppo, where he was welcomed by the Hamdanid ruler Saif al-Dawla. Saif al-Dawla gathered many scholars and poets around him, and Al-Farabi found a supportive environment there. However, even in the court, he did not change his lifestyle. While poets and scholars enjoyed luxury, Al-Farabi is said to have lived on very little, often eating only bread and vegetables, wearing simple clothes, and rejecting any unnecessary wealth. During this time, Al-Farabi continued to write. His works on logic became textbooks for later generations. He divided logic into two main parts, demonstration and dialectic. He argued that logic was the tool that allowed human beings to distinguish between truth and falsehood, between reality and illusion. His precise explanations made him the authority on logic for centuries to come. By 950, Al-Farabi was one of the most respected scholars in the entire Muslim world. His writings were spreading from Baghdad to Damascus, from Aleppo to Andalusia. In his philosophy, he tried to harmonize the teachings of Plato and Aristotle with Islamic thought. This was not easy, because Greek philosophy and Islamic theology sometimes appeared to contradict each other. But Al-Farabi believed that true philosophy and true religion must both lead to the same ultimate truth. In 950 as well, he also wrote about metaphysics and cosmology. In his view, the universe was structured in a hierarchy of beings, starting from the first cause, God, who is pure and perfect. From God, everything else flows in a chain of intellects and spheres until it reaches the material world. Human beings, through reason and philosophy, can ascend intellectually and spiritually toward this higher truth. By 950 to 951, in his later years, Al-Farabi focused more on teaching his students and organizing his philosophical system. His disciples later carried his teachings into many lands, influencing Muslim Spain, North Africa, and eventually Christian Europe. His attempt to reconcile philosophy with religion was especially influential on Ibn Sina Avicenna, who came shortly after him. Without Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina's philosophy would not have taken the form we know today. In 950, a famous story is told about his relationship with Saif al-Dawlah's court. Once Al-Farabi attended a gathering where poets and scholars competed in wit and elegance. Saif al-Dawlah asked Al-Farabi to contribute. Instead of poetry, Al-Farabi took a musical instrument and began to play. First, his music made everyone laugh. Then he changed the tone, and everyone began to weep. Finally, he changed it again, and everyone fell asleep. Then he quietly left the gathering, leaving behind an unforgettable memory of his mastery over music and the soul. Finally, in the year 950 or 951, in Damascus, Al-Farabi passed away at around 79 years of age. He was buried in the city, and his grave remains a place of memory for lovers of knowledge. His death marked the end of a life fully devoted to learning, but his writings ensured that his legacy would continue. His books such as The Virtuous City, the great book of music on the intellect, and commentaries on Aristotle remained foundational for centuries. Even today, modern scholars study his works to understand not only Islamic philosophy, but also the universal questions of society, ethics, and the meaning of life. Al-Farabi's timeline from 872 to 951 tells us about the journey of a man who, without wealth or political power, became immortal through the strength of his ideas. From Farab to Baghdad, from Baghdad to Aleppo and Damascus. His footsteps crossed lands, but his thoughts crossed centuries. He was not only a philosopher of his own age, but also a teacher for all ages to come.